All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome aboard. We continue with our coverage of tonight's Super Tuesday primaries, and it has been a very exciting night. An exciting night if you're Donald Trump, even exciting if you're John Kasich, and I guess you're on pins and needles if you're Ted Cruz. Let me explain, as they say. On the Republican side, right now we have two races too close to call. But let me start with the states that have been won. Donald Trump, Florida. He wins all those delegates, the 99. He wins North Carolina, and he wins Illinois. Now, John Kasich, the governor of Ohio, has taken the winner state all, the 66 delegates in the state of Ohio. Marco Rubio dropped out of the race earlier tonight after a very disappointing finish in Florida, where he got approximately 27% of the vote to Donald Trump's 45 in his own home state. The two races still up for grabs. Let's start with the one on the Republican side in Missouri. As we speak, with about 99% of the vote tallied, Donald Trump has about a 3,000 vote lead, about 0.2% vote lead. Now, this is not a winner-take-all state, so no matter who wins by that margin, they're going to, split the delegates proportionately. So it doesn't really make that much of a difference. But if Donald Trump could say, I won Florida, I won Ohio, I won North Carolina, I won Illinois, and I won Missouri, and Ted Cruz can't say he won anything, that's a little bit of a momentum ride right there. On the Democrat side, Hillary Clinton has won Florida, North Carolina, and Ohio. Still too close to call in her home state of Illinois. And as it's too close to call on the Republican side, Missouri is too close to call for the Democrats as well. So that's where we are right now. By the way, we're going to take your phone calls in this hour, as I do every night on the Steve Malzberg Show. You can watch me Monday through Friday at 7 p.m. Eastern right here on Newsmax TV. 877-NEWSMAX, 877-639-7629. Let's welcome in our next panel, and that would be Christopher Hahn, Democratic strategist and syndicated radio host. He joins us right now. Hello, Christopher.
Hey, how you doing?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm doing good. One note on Missouri, it's not directly proportional. It is proportional by congressional district. And I'm looking at a map right now, and it looks like Donald Trump won most of that state. Ted Cruz has a couple of pockets of support, but it looks to me like he's maybe winning in one or two congressional districts. So it could be a very bad night for Ted Cruz.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Good point. Okay, so let's keep the Republican theme. I was going to start with Hillary and the Democrats, but let's go to the Republican side here. Let's assume Donald Trump holds on with less than 1% of the vote to count, and him having a 0.2 of a point lead. Let's work under that premise. Trump didn't even mention Ted Cruz tonight in his speech.
Right.
So these people who say that now it's a lesser field, of course, Kasich is still in there. However, it's now a three-man race. It's better for Cruz because it's he'll do better. I don't buy that.
No, I don't buy it either. And I think that if Ted Cruz does anything but win outright in Arizona next week, he needs to think about calling it quits. Now, look, I know it's a difficult road for Trump to hoe to get to 1237. But Ted Cruz is not going to be a consensus pick at a convention. And if he wants the voters to have their say, he probably is going to have to get out of the race.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. Now, as far as John Kasich goes, he won his home state. If he did not win his home state, he would have had to have gotten out just as Marco Rubio got out tonight for he didn't win Florida by a long shot.
Right.
But for Kasich, he gave a victory speech, and God bless him. I have nothing against him except he's too liberal for me. And when he starts to talk about what he talks about, my eyes glaze over. That's not to say that he's a bad guy and couldn't be competitive. Having said that, he's won Ohio, and all he's won is Ohio. He didn't even come in as high as second in any of the other contests today. What do you see his role going forward as being?
Well, he is mathematically eliminated from getting 1237. That said, he would be somebody who might be a consensus candidate at a convention. He's obviously he won Ohio. Republicans can't win the presidency without Ohio and Virginia, and they need him on the ticket in some respect. So he would need to be at a contested convention. I have said this before. Of the three left, he's the most electable in a general election. I don't believe Donald Trump is. I definitely don't believe Ted Cruz is. So I think Kasich is a guy who hopes for a convention that's contested, and he hopes that they pick him.
All right, let's welcome in to the panel Bre Payton, staff writer with The Federalist. And Bre, I got to tell you, I'd love your take first before we get to the point that Christopher just made, which I vehemently disagree with. But what's your take on what we have seen so far tonight as it relates to Trump and Cruz and Kasich and, of course, the newly departed from the race, Marco Rubio?
Yeah, so I vehemently disagree that Kasich has any shot at getting the nomination at all. This is a guy who, even though he won the delegates in Ohio, but going forward, in order to lock up the number that he needs, he's going to have to lock up something like 83% of all the remaining delegates, which we know is not going to happen. So his best path at possibly getting the nomination would be through a contested convention. But could you imagine what would happen in the aftermath of what that would be if we had a contested convention? And then the GOP named Kasich as the Republican nominee? I mean, that would be a disaster. This is a guy who, so far, has only been able to get something like 17% of the delegates. I mean, that would be ridiculous. So I don't see the nomination as a possibility at all in his future.
Yeah, and Christopher, I got to tell you, you say he's electable.
He's not.
Was Romney electable? Was McCain electable?
Well,
wait, let me just finish. This is another in the same long line who's going to run a polite campaign, and we can't say anything about anybody, and we can't disrespect. But more importantly, Christopher, Donald Trump has brought in independents. He's energized Republicans who haven't voted in years. He's brought in some Democrats. If Trump gets screwed at the convention, they're not going to come out and vote for John Kasich. They're sitting home along with the base of the party because their candidate is going to say, the Supreme Court said gay marriage. We got to have gay marriage. Oh, yeah, man-made global warming. Oh, yeah, that's real. Goodbye,
right,
John Kasich.
Let me put it to you this way, Steve. You're my good friend. I am not going to be losing sleep over Donald Trump or Ted Cruz as the Republican nominee. In fact, I'll be wondering where my former boss, Chuck Schumer's majority leader office will be in the Capitol after the election. Now, John Kasich, on the other hand, would give me cold sweats. John Kasich could win a general election. The difference between John Kasich and, let's say, Mitt Romney, evangelical voters who did not come out for Mitt Romney because they questioned his faith will not stay home for John Kasich. John Kasich is a man who I think could run a real campaign and could actually win an election. I also think we'd have a real policy debate between John Kasich and Hillary Clinton about ideas, not about personalities.
Well, I think
that would be good for the country.
Well, Bre, I think that would be good for Hillary because we need a personality and more debate. We need Hillary, who runs around championing women, to have the women who claim that they've been threatened by Hillary to come out. We need the Benghazi parents who have been lied to by Hillary, who Hillary has called a liar, to come out. We need the tape to be played of Hillary bragging about getting a child rapist off when she runs as the champion of children. That's what's going to defeat the Clinton machine. And John Kasich will be incapable and unwilling to do what Donald Trump will do to beat Hillary Clinton, Bre.
I think you're exactly right. And I think someone who has only been able to lock up something like 17% of the Republican base, for him, I think definitely would be a liability in a general election. I don't see, if he can't even convince Republicans to vote for him, how would he be able to convince most of the country, So I definitely see Kasich as more of a liability for the Republican Party, and I think that you're right, the sentiment of Trumpism and the sentiments of, hey, we're tired of Republicans not doing what they say they're going to do when we elect them, definitely won't die. And I think Kasich's record of unilaterally implementing the Medicaid expansion and circumventing the Republican legislature in Ohio during his tenure tenure as governor will definitely come around to bite him in the butt later on if he ends up being the nominee. So
Right.
I don't really see how Kasich can be anything other than a liability. I definitely don't see him as a viable.
Christopher, let me ask you about the future of Marco Rubio. We've had a great discussion on this all night long. Now that he's out, I maintain he's not dead politically. You wait a couple of years and people will forget. It's not like he, was caught up in a scandal. He just lost.
Right. The only thing the media likes more than tearing you down is a comeback story. So, look, I mean, the guy's a very talented, gifted politician. I think that he will have a future. I wouldn't write him off completely. I think he might run for re-election for his Senate seat this year. So we'll see.
That's interesting. That's very interesting. Bre, what do you think of the political?
The deadline has not passed, so he still can.
What do you think of the political future of Marco Rubio, Bre?
I think he definitely could run for something in the future. I think that this year really wasn't his year to run for president. But I don't think he's totally dead in the water, and I think it's good that he's deciding to pull out now before he, leaves a more bad taste in the mouth of Republicans and makes himself a spoiler candidate. So I think it's good he got out now.
And Christopher, very quickly, you're a Democratic strategist. We got about 30 seconds on the Democrat side. I know there are two races still up for grabs, but is this basically the end for Bernie?
Yeah, I mean, look, he didn't win anywhere. He didn't win Ohio. If he would have won Ohio tonight, he would have had a really good claim to staying in this race. He probably will stay in the race, but the delegate math for him has gotten very difficult, and it's not a super delegate math. It's a pledged delegate math. So he really doesn't have an argument to going forward.
All right. Listen, Bre and Christopher, I want to thank you both very much. Ladies and gentlemen, next we are taking your phone calls. This may be new to some of you. Call 877-NEWSMAX, 877-639-7629, and you could talk with me, but more importantly, I could speak with you. Don't go away.